Yeah, obviously, any injury serious and neck injury serious. I'm really week to week. Put him on IR that puts him out for 4 games. So I'll trust in the medical team here. But he'll with the medical team, we'll continue to look at that.
And then with Dewan, how do you think he played in his second start there, and do you plan to keep him in that spot?
Yeah, I do plan on keeping him there. He's a young player that's going to continue to get better. It's not perfect. There's things he can get better at, but I do believe it's leaving him there and letting him develop there is the best thing.
Does that say anything about Jed? I mean, he was a former number one pick for you guys.
Not, I'm not trying to say anything about him. I'm just trying to put Dewan out there and let him get better. Jed's still a player that we believe in, and right now he's got to be ready to go.
Thanks.
All right, next one, Mary Kay.
Yeah, Kevin, just wondering, how did you think that, well, first of all, the breakdowns between Denzel and Juan, maybe you can help us understand those a little bit better. It looked like maybe Denzel should have had the second one and maybe Juan the first one, but maybe you can shed some light on that. And then the follow-up to that would be, should Denzel have been out there just so short after suffering from the concussion?
I think on the second part there, Mary Kay, we trust in the protocols. I believe that they're in place for the guys to be out there safely. So I do believe that. As you know, and everybody knows, when you have breakdowns like that and people are open like that, there's clearly been a breakdown of some sort, whether it's communication or the wrong technique, so to speak. We'll deal with that internally. We'll point it out, but we need to be better. But anytime you have something like that, it does. It's obviously something that we got to be on the same page.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll go to Daryl.
Yeah, Kevin, is the South Scout that you guys are going to do during the bye week, is that more about looking for ways to make adjustments or changes, or just what you guys typically do week to week, and that's just, identifying mistakes and corrections?
Well, I think it's big picture. We need to play better on offense, on defense, on special teams. And this gives you the ability to zoom out for a minute and see what those maybe big adjustments are, small adjustments are that can help you do a better job on all three of those areas. So it's something, of course, you do self-scout every week. I think when you get to this point of your season, you can zoom out and spend a little bit more time there.
And now that the sample size is 9 games, your record is what it is. The offensive fall off this season from what we had become accustomed to seeing with you, regardless of who the quarterback was. Just why do you think there's been such a dramatic fall off this year, and why it's been so difficult for you guys to establish any type of consistency on that side of the ball?
Well, I think obviously we need to play better. We need to coach better. This is something that we all share in when you're not playing well, and it's something that we believe we can get it fixed. We believe we have the players. We believe we have the scheme, all those things to get this thing fixed and play better. And there's been certainly glimpses of that, but not enough with how we're playing on that side of the ball.
All right, next we'll go to Jeff.
Kevin, could you just assess your quarterback situation as it is now?
In what regard, Jeff?
Well, I mean, do you think what gives you confidence that Jameis is the right guy, or DTR, or what, with 7 games to go, or 8 games to go?
My focus is on us playing better as a team. Obviously, there were moments yesterday that we fell short. Jameis can play better. He knows that. We turning the ball over is just not a way to win in this league. He knows that. But that's really where we are, just focused on getting better.
Thanks.
All right, next we'll go to Cam.
Kevin, you mentioned some of that offensive evaluation and things that you need to clean up. When you go back and look at the film over the past couple weeks, have you been able to identify maybe things that disconnects with the planning or the execution? Is that something you guys have been able to at least eye in some regard?
Well, I think we haven't been consistent enough, Cam. So obviously there's going to be things that we're just not doing a good enough job, whether it be in the schematic part of it, whether it be the execution. It's really an all of the above has to be better. In order to be consistent and score points in this league, you have to be better in a bunch of different areas.
I know it's kind of a broad question, but I mean, what are the keys to creating consistency in that regard?
Yeah, I think obviously just playing efficient football, in this case, we're talking about offense, it requires all of us to do our job. And that's myself, that's our coaches, that's our players. It's complicated, but it's also as simple as that.
Thank you.
All right, next we go to Tony.
All right. Kevin, 2 weeks ago, you made two pretty big changes. Winston went in there and Dorsey took over play calling. Are you contemplating anything major during the bye week, staff-wise or otherwise?
No, but we'll look at everything, Tony, in terms of what we can do better, but no major changes expected.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next we go to Ashley.
Hey, Kevin, to follow up on the linebacker situation here, I mean, Mahmoud and Winston obviously played a lot more than they had previously. Looked like maybe something happened on that 16-yard Dobbins touchdown in the second quarter. Was that a linebacker thing? And just how do you think those younger guys did in there?
Yeah, those guys, they played hard. Wasn't perfect at all the time, but I thought they battled. With young players, there's going to be some mistakes. You know that when you're playing some young players, but they certainly played hard. Not to get into any specifics on plays, Ashley, but I do think there's certainly things to clean up. But for the most part, guys were where they're supposed to be. But we can definitely be better.
And then just to follow up on Scott's Jed question, I mean, this is obviously a situation he hasn't been in before, where he's healthy and not starting. So I guess just how have you seen him handle that, and what's his demeanor and attitude that you can see?
It's all part of football. You know, this is you get injured sometimes, and sometimes you go in as a backup. Sometimes you're starter. That's just how this game goes. He's somebody that has played a lot of football for us. We've played and won with him. We have confidence in him. But in this case, he's the swing tackle, and he has to be ready to go in at a moment's notice, and he will be.
All right, we'll go back to Scott.
And Kevin, after the game, Cedric mentioned the Chargers kind of taking away some of the in-breaking routes that he had success with. Is that something he and you guys as a staff will have to adjust to?
Definitely have to adjust both in game and week to week based on what defenses are doing. I thought for the majority of the game, I thought there was a good handle on what they were doing versus us. Had some of our opportunities, but again, just goes back to being consistent on that side of the ball.
And what's scheduled this week?
We're here today, no.
Thanks.
All right, we'll go back to Mary Kay.
Yeah, Kevin, just wonder your next opponent, Dennis Allen, was fired today. Can you maybe just address that a little bit and just how much of a business this is and how you guys, it's just a win now business and anything can happen for anyone at any time like that?
Yeah, you never like to see that in this profession. Obviously, Mary Kay, I understand it's part of it, but never like to see that with fellow coaches around the league. We'll play them in a couple weeks. We'll spend some time looking at their team throughout this week as well.
Thank you.
All right, next go back to Daryl.
Yeah, Kevin, another big picture question for you. Seeing as you're 2-7, you have tried to make adjustments here, and they haven't produced the results that you're looking for. Has there been any discussion about, with the trade deadline being tomorrow, beginning the process of a roster rebuild or a reshuffling of some sort?
My focus is really on our team, finding a way to win a football game week in and week out. That's really where my focus is.
All right, we'll go back to Cam.
Kevin, I actually wanted to ask something about that as well. I mean, obviously you're focused on this team at hand, but that trade deadline is tomorrow. So as their head coach, especially some of the younger guys, that this might be a new process for them. What's the message for them, knowing that maybe some guys could be on the team, maybe there could be changes in this time?
I think with all sports, when you talk about trades and injuries and all sorts of things that are totally out of your control, that's you can't focus on them because of that. You acknowledge that that's true, but we'll really just focus on controlling the things that we can control.
Thanks.
All right, and last question from Tony.
Okay. Kevin, I know everybody in the building is super frustrated and disappointed with 2-7. I'm wondering what's the level of support you're getting from the owners, and have things gotten stressful at all?
2-7 is stressful for everybody, Tony. And you're right. Everybody's frustrated. I know I'm frustrated. Our players are frustrated. I'm sure our fans are frustrated right there with us when you have the record we have. But we're focused on getting better. We're focused on using this week to find a way to get better and then go on the road and get a win next week. That's really where our focus is.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Coach. Guys, we'll have Ethan in a second.
Thanks, guys.
You're up. All right, guys, welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily on a Reaction Monday. I'm Jason Gibbs. Nathan Zagura will join shortly. Andrew Siciliano will join us at 1:30, and the Hall of Famer Joe Thomas from 2 to 2:30 today. Welcome into the Cross Country Mortgage Campus here in Berea. That was the head coach of your Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski, from the podium, presented by Vivid Seats. Purchase your official fan experience package today for the ultimate game day. The hot topics of the day presented by University Hospitals, the official healthcare partner of your Cleveland Browns. The Browns, a tough one down at Huntington Bank Field yesterday as they lose to the LA Chargers. I wanted to call them the San Diego Chargers just because they lose to the Chargers 27-10. A rough day on all three facets: offense, defense, and special teams, all with some big mistakes. And you shoot yourselves in the foot enough times, and that's where things go. And right now, that now finds you at 2-7 on the football season. We are officially into the bye week. The players are here today. You heard Coach just a few minutes ago. Meetings just wrapping up for the day. There will be more meetings and some workouts tomorrow. And then the team, the players are off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before coming back into the building next Monday and turning the page to the New Orleans Saints. Coaches will be here, I would assume, most of the week. This has always been a big week for Coach Stefanski and his group, and there will be a lot of self-scouting. They'll figure out some steps, and we'll see what happens here over the course of these last 8 games of the 2024 season. The big takeaway of the day, DeJuan Jones will continue to start at left tackle. I think that's great. He's shown a lot, and I think there's a lot of promise there. And DeJuan, you could tell just watching his demeanor on the sidelines, and even he had a little shoulder issue, had to come out of the game, had to go into the locker room, but then came back out onto the field. There was no way he wasn't going to come back into the football game, from what Clay Weiss and Gerard Cherry down on the sideline told me. And he came back in and gave you some meaningful snaps, and was one of the bright spots yesterday in an ugly loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. Myles Garrett, an incredible performance, 3 sacks. Corey Bojorquez continues to impress. 53 yards per punt, put 3 inside the 20, a couple inside the 10. But special teams still had their issues. They gave up a 53-yard punt return. Jameis Winston, as good as he was the week before, a rough day yesterday against that Chargers defense. We knew that the Chargers defense was good. They are really good. Jameis Winston, 26 of 46 for 235 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions in the football game. The defense, just some miscommunication and some rough patches yesterday, and it cost him a 68-yard touchdown catch by Quentin Johnston and a 28-yard touchdown catch by Josh Palmer. Both guys wide open. A lot of miscommunication. Denzel, after the game, throwing it on his shoulders. But those 2 plays really kind of set the defense back on an otherwise really defense played well, except they gave up a couple big plays due to the miscommunication. And what you end up with is a 20-7-10 LA Chargers loss to the Cleveland Browns. We're going to take a quick timeout. Nathan's going to be back. Yay! There we go. And then Andrew Siciliano will join us at 1:30. Joe Thomas at 2 o'clock. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily. We are underway. Those are the hot topics of the day, presented by University Hospitals, the official healthcare partner of your Cleveland Browns. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Being a victim
You're down, Gibbs.
can affect every part of your world. Elk and Elk knows this, and it's why we're there for every client, every day. Call Elk and Elk at 1-800-ELK-OHIO.
On game day, there's nothing like tailgating, touchdowns, and Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Twisted Tea goes down smooth and tastes like real iced tea because it's made with real brewed tea. Cool, refreshing, and a 5% kick of alcohol. Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Look for the bright yellow cans wherever you buy beer. Keep it twisted.
Twisted Tea Brewing Company, Cincinnati, Ohio. Please drink responsibly.
Northeast Ohio's own Cleveland Browns and the University of Akron are teaming up to elevate the student experience. The University of Akron offers one-of-a-kind opportunities for its students as the official university of the Cleveland Browns. From internships to behind-the-scenes access to the Browns front office, this partnership opens doors to professional growth that students won't find anywhere else. Don't miss out on the incredible opportunity to be a part of the Akron Zips family. Schedule your visit today at uakron.edu/visit.
The future of recycling is now, and Rumpke Waste and Recycling, the recycling leader, has invested over $100 million to build North America's largest, most technologically advanced recycling center right here in Ohio. A one-of-a-kind facility that can process 250,000 tons of material annually from over 50 Ohio counties. This helps feed the circular economy by supplying Ohio companies with the material you place into your bins to good use. Find out how you can do your part by recycling more. Visit rumpke.com today.
Howard Hanna is the official real estate provider of the Cleveland Browns. If your game plan for this season includes buying or selling a home, Howard Hanna has the answer. Delivering a winning strategy for breaking down the game of real estate. Howard Hanna are the market leaders in Northeast Ohio. More buyers and sellers trust Howard Hanna to be their home team. Visit howardhanna.com/go Browns.
He's still going. Touchdown! He put on 3 different moves and got in.
That's howardhanna.com/go Browns. Visit today.
As the official healthcare partner of the Cleveland Browns, we're here for Hail Mary passes and important early catches. We're University Hospital Seidman Cancer Center, and we play
Back in 30, I'll play the open here.
because catching it early means a better
Sounds good,
chance
thanks.
of curing it. Women should start annual mammograms at age 40 or earlier if there's family history. Go to uhhospitals.org/mammogram to schedule a screening today.
We rally around the Browns no matter what. And if you've been injured, the best fans in the world deserve award-winning attorneys to get them the compensation they need.
Coming back.
Proud to stand with you at every game and every trial. Elk and Elk, proud partner of the Cleveland Browns.
You want it, or you want me to do it?
That's what I just said. Are you going to be Bodie?
Oh, no. No. I thought I was just like sitting in for a second.
All right, here we go.
We're a well-oiled machine.
We're ready to go. We're back. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. Now live in Ohio. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, Andrew Siciliano will join the program. Hour number 2, we will have the Joe Thomas half hour at 2 o'clock, and then we will hear some great clips. We'll hear the Myles Garrett sack montage, and we will do a little bit more, talk about that Monday Night Football game. Hey, the scores were good yesterday, so we have to look forward to that on Friday, or you certainly can look forward to who took advantage of it, can look forward to it right now. But, just rough day, obviously, yesterday. It was
It was bad. It was bad in all three phases.
Yeah.
You had, 3 giveaways on offense. You had 4 straight possessions in the second half where you went into LA Chargers territory that ended with interception, blocked field goal. You defensively at times were really good, but the busts in coverage were devastating. And, if you watch it back, it appears now what we don't know on the first one if it was cover 2 or cover 6. It appears to be cover 2. Certainly was on one half of the field. It appeared to be cover 2, just period. But if it was cover 6, it could have been cover 2 on one half, cover 4 on the other, and then Denzel would have been responsible for the vertical on the outside. If it was cover 2, as it appeared, Juan Thornhill would be responsible for that vertical on the outside. But that's a bust. Either way, whichever coverage it actually was, one of those guys did not do the right thing. Now, Denzel took ownership for it. At the same time, Juan Thornhill was like, no, we can't do that. So I don't know what happened there. The other one, everybody on the defense was playing cover 3 except for Denzel, who played cover 2 and let the vertical go behind him. You just can't have those type of busts. And, last time we played the Chargers in 2021, we had one of those. And if you go back and you think from like 21, 22, 23, 24, the last 4 years, there's probably 10 touchdowns. I mean, think about that. The Jets game, there are probably 10 touchdowns that are just wide open, easy as you can have in the National Football League coverage bust touchdowns. You had one back in Carolina in that week 1. I can't remember when that's happened for the Browns. I can remember it happening against us way too much.
Yeah.
Way too much. And I don't even understand. It doesn't even really make sense.
My bigger issue is it is week 9.
Yeah,
This is happening in week 9.
Yeah, and you can't have that. It is stupefying what's happened to the Cleveland Browns. Pro Football Focus, in case people were wondering, they gave the first one to Thornhill. They gave the second one to Denzel. So they must have felt like it was cover 2 and cover 3 on the 2 plays respectively. Yeah, it's really dumbfounding how this team continues to have those catastrophic lapses. You've now had a kick return touchdown, a punt return touchdown, and then a 53-yard punt return on the season. And offensively, you turn the ball over and you've not been able to make enough plays. Now, Kevin Stefanski, I did not hear it, but it sounds like he said from reading the tweets of it, the coverage of it, that there will be basically no major changes, that we just have to be better. And we've got to be a lot better. But he said no major changes coming to staff or operation or really even the lineup. I'm a little surprised. You guys know where I've stood on this for a while. Is Jameis Winston right now a better quarterback than DTR? Of course. Yeah, he's got the history, all of the things that he's done. But do we kind of know what Jameis is? And I would also say yes. And I think we've seen in 2 weeks, we saw good Jameis, albeit with some luck, some dropped interceptions that easily could have lost that game. And then this past week we saw, bad Jameis. Didn't really see the field as well. The 3 interceptions.
Different type of defense.
Just
didn't adjust to it.
Yeah, and so it's tough right now. I mean, I know you still want to go and compete, and perhaps Jameis is saying, "Let me go back to New Orleans where I was for all those years and have that opportunity." But at some point, I think you need to see DTR and see what he can be, because he's the only in-house solution to a very serious quarterback and salary issue in this organization, and we've never seen him actually get. Now, can he stay healthy? That's the other question. DTR probably, had he not hurt his finger in the game, would have started against the Ravens, and then who knows what any of this looks like. But he hasn't either been able to stay healthy. Remember when he first was the starter, the reason Joe Flacco's here, because he got concussed against Denver. Then he goes in late against Houston, suffers the hip injury. Now he's got the finger injury. So I want to see 8 games and say, okay, number one, how does he look? And number 2, can he survive 8 games? Because, like I said, we kind of know what we're getting with Jameis Winston. You're going to get a guy that's going to put up numbers and have the ability to get the ball down the field, certainly. And you're also at the same time going to have a guy that's going to throw the ball to the other team. And, we know that in his career, that's what he's done. 102 interceptions for his career. I think we had the stat yesterday. It was his 13th game with 3 or more interceptions. So, I don't know. It's tough. On one hand, you could say, look, we can run the table and 10-7 still in play. On the other hand, I think if we were all being honest, that feels...
It's an awful tall task. Given
it
the opponents
feels a
you're
little far-fetched to think that is in play for the Cleveland Browns right now. So, I don't know. This season, it is shocking to me that this is where we are. To me, it feels like where we are necessitates change.
And normally this coaching staff, as I talked about in the first segment, like the bye week has been that where they've gotten together and they've done the self-evaluation and the reflection.
The self-scout, yeah.
Yeah, the self-scout. And there have been changes that have come out of that. In 2020, there were changes. There were changes last year. I mean, there were things that were adjusted, things that were tweaked, operations updated, players, and whatever the case might be. Now, he did say DeJuan Jones going to continue to start at left tackle.
Of course.
Great.
As he should.
Yes. Continue to develop him. The offensive line's going to be together, it looks like, for a third consecutive game.
Right, which we have not had yet.
Nope.
So that's a positive, right?
Yeah.
I like that. And again, there were things to like in this game. You had 6 sacks in the first half of Justin
Herbert. They
Herbert.
were in the backfield all day. And that Chargers offensive line, they're not a group of slouches.
No, they were considered one of the better offensive lines in the league. Listen, there was at one point in the game, and these stats are not going to be perfect, but there was one point in the game where the Chargers had run, we'll say, call it 19 plays, and 2 of the plays went for, 66 and 28. So 2 of the plays went for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns, and the other 17 plays went for like 15 yards. I mean, we were very good, except when we were not. And then as the game wore on, couldn't get off the field at times on third down. The bust in the coverage we talked about. You have some busts in your run fits as well that lets J.K. Dobbins get his first touchdown. The second one was really when the game was already decided. But this was just not a good performance in really any way. And it's unfortunate because it's what this season to me alone, is about now identifying the young core and developing the young core that you've got here for your football team. Who is going to be part of my core in 2025 and beyond? That's what it's about. And so at the quarterback position, that's DTR. So that's who I would want to see at this point. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Can he be something of significance? They made him the backup quarterback against Philly for a reason. So after the game against Philly, it was against the Bengals. So DTR, can you be somebody who can help us out? At the running back position, obviously you're still playing Nick Chubb, Ford. I want to see more Pierre Strong still, but I think I'm alone in that. Nick Chubb right now, it's hard. He's running well, but you can tell he is not yet the Nick Chubb of old. And from an injury that's significant, my guess is that would take a full 2 years.
Correct.
So I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
His vision is there. He made some of the cuts that Nick Chubb would make, but there were a couple ones that he bounced out left where you're like, oh, that's going to be a touchdown, and then he just doesn't have that initial burst that we typically know of and have loved of Nick Chubb. So will he get back? Yes, I think he will get back. Is he back all the way yet? No, but I think it's going to keep getting better, and the bye week I think should be good for him as well. Wide receiver position, you got Jerry Jeudy. Elijah Moore is still on a rookie deal, folks. And then you've got Cedric Tillman. And I want to see Jamari Thrash get some run as the season goes on. But Cedric Tillman, over the last 3 weeks, has been a bona fide superstar. And that's really by every available metric there is. I'm going to highlight a post from one of the guys from my fantasy football days that was a good friend, Ian Hartitz. Let me go right here to my posts. And he said These are just facts. It's not like a thing. Over the last 3 weeks, Cedric Tillman tied for first among all wide receivers with 32 targets, tied for second with 3 receiving touchdowns, fifth with 255 receiving yards, second with 403 air yards. In terms of PPR fantasy points, he's number 1. He's been the number 1 PPR wide receiver in the NFL over the last 3 weeks. So you want to see him. Tight end, I still consider David Njoku a young guy. He's not somebody I have any interest in trading at all, even though I heard Mike Florio said that on Sunday Night Football.
Bold little statement out of nowhere.
So he's the one there. There really isn't another young tight end. Akins is in his 30s. Jeff Swaim's an aged veteran, so that's about David Njoku. On the offensive line.
And then we have to go to break. Mr. Siciliano.
So we'll just do the offense then. On the offensive line, obviously that's DeJuan Jones. Wyatt, Ethan. Yes, you're going to play Joel or Jack unless somebody calls on them. And then I think you have to listen to those things. Jed Wills, if you did make a move, can he go back to right tackle? Could he play guard for you? I don't know. We'll see. But, the core right there, DeJuan's a part of the core. Chief Judy said, Elijah Moore, I think, has a chance to be a part of that core. And that's why I said you want to look at DTR. But I don't know when that time will be, but I think he needs some time, and he has never really had proper lead time to anything. He was informed very late. Obviously, his first start in the league, he was informed the morning of.
He didn't know when he showed up at the stadium.
He was back up. His second start, he probably didn't know until Wednesday of that week because that's when Deshaun was announced out. So that was a very quick turnaround. His third start, he finally had a full week against Denver, and his last 3 scoring drives on the road against a good defense, or his last 3 drives were all scoring drives. Then he gets hurt. And then this year, the game that he was the backup and actually ended up going in, reportedly, he didn't find out until Saturday. So I'd like to see him get some time and the chance to be that guy. When will we see that? I don't know. But what I do know is when we come back, Andrew Siciliano, the play-by-play voice of your Cleveland Browns, he will join me on the Twisted Tea hotline. So that's coming up next here on Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet. Boost your game day this season with the Ballybet Sportsbook app. Place your first bet of $50 or more, and you'll get $150 back in bonus bets. Ballybet, an official sports betting partner of the Cleveland Browns. Go into the Twisted Tea hotline now. Welcome in my broadcast partner, the play-by-play voice of your Cleveland Browns, Andrew Siciliano. Joining us now via the Twisted Tea hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. Mr. Siciliano, welcome back to California.
Thank you. Looking at the Pacific Ocean right now. It's a beautiful sunny day. Just opening my mail, trying to get life back. And how are things there? I miss you guys already.
Miss you as well, as you can imagine. Not necessarily the best. I'm not sure if you saw Kevin Stefanski's availability.
That was semi-sarcastic.
I know that was sarcasm. Yes, indeed. Did you see Coach's availability?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. What do you make of it? It feels to me like after you're 2-7, probably there should be some changes made, but it sounds like Browns will not be making changes. Most notably, Jameis Winston will remain your starting quarterback.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to. That was a gallows humor there, laugh. It's there's a couple ways to look at it, Nathan. Number one, I don't know what decisions would be announced on the Monday directly after the game. You have 2 weeks to figure out if you do want to change things, and I think we have to get past the trade deadline before any grand proclamations can and could be made. It is not in Kevin's MO to come out and announce things immediately on Monday if things were to change. I think there's a reevaluation, obviously, that I think everyone has to have between now and 4 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And then I would say, Andrew Berry's press conference on Wednesday afternoon probably gives us a little bit more of a roadmap moving forward. I did not expect him to come out today and say, hey, DTR is the starter. I mean, the one headline here is DeJuan Jones is the left tackle moving forward. That's something that Kevin and I discussed, and that was on the pregame show on Sunday morning. So I think that certainly is a headline. The one that, that I didn't like the answer to necessarily, not what he said, but gave me pause, was the fact that, there wasn't a yes, JOK is back this year. I don't have any insight on that. It was a week-to-week thing. I would have loved to have heard JOK is this year.
Yeah, I would have loved to have heard that as well. And you're exactly right. There certainly is plenty of time to make changes. He just said that, he doesn't expect any major changes. Doesn't mean that they can't make them. And one of the things that Kevin Stefanski always does during this period is the self-scout. And you'd have to imagine that self-scout will lead to some kind of findings that could lead to a change. Because what we saw yesterday was, unfortunately, a failure in all three phases. You had special teams gives up a big punt return. You have a field goal blocked. You're talking about offensively, the 3 interceptions and an inability to score points, score touchdowns before the end of the game. And then defensively, you were really good for a lot of the plays, but the ones you weren't, you were catastrophically bad.
Yeah, I was just watching back right now. Actually, I think I got 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, so the game's basically over. It is stunning to me how many negative plays this defense produced.
Yeah.
I mean, where the Chargers went nowhere, right? Where stopped to the line, hit in the backfield, Herbert sacked. Play after play after play after play after play. But you have the busted coverages on the 2 touchdowns, and whether they're all Denzel's fault or whether it's Juan Thornhill out of hand of them, whomever it was, obviously they didn't work. And then the J.K. Dobbins play, which was really a backbreaker late in the second quarter because you're still hanging around despite those 2 busted coverages and the 2 long touchdowns. But the Chargers get in the red zone, and that's where you miss J.O.K. and Jordan Hicks right there on that play, period. And then offensively, they were taking away the first option. Jameis wasn't moving quickly to the second and third option. You knew they were going to play zone, and that's what the frustrating part of it is. You knew all week this is how the Chargers are going to play defensively for the most part, right? Yep. And the answers weren't there.
No, and at times the answers were there. Just he didn't see it or didn't throw it.
They were there. They weren't exactly.
Weren't capitalized on.
You weren't finding the answers. Better way to say it. Well, you couldn't capitalize, and you couldn't effectively get the ground game going. You fall behind early, and you end up throwing it 45 times.
Yep.
This offense is not built to go 5 wide and empty all the time, trying to come back from down multiple scores.
No, to your point earlier about the defense making plays in the backfield, the Browns had 6 sacks in this game and 10 tackles for a loss in this game.
You're not supposed to lose when Miles gets 3 sacks. Let's put it that way.
No. Miles had 3. Dalvin had 1.5. That gives him a career-high 3, ties his career high with 3 already. Devin Bush got a sack. Shelby Harris had half a sack. Miles, not only 3 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss. Dalvin, 2 tackles for a loss. Devin Bush, a tackle for a loss. Isaiah McGuire had a tackle for a loss. Obo had 2 tackles for a loss. Zadarius had a tackle for a loss. You were making plays in that backfield, and you had 4 passes defensed as well as a defense. But yet, you're right. Those breakdowns are the ones that really did cost you. You mentioned the ground game. Nick Chubb, 15 carries for 39 yards in this one. And really, he's averaging under 3 yards a carry now over 3 games. I said earlier, it's clear to me he is not back to the Nick Chubb of old. And that's going to have to take some time coming off of an injury like the one he suffered, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. Return to play is not necessarily a return to performance. We have seen glimpses of it. I think he's gotten better progressively with each week. Any player that comes back from just an ACL injury, especially a skill position player, especially a running back, will tell you that they are back, but they are not the same. It takes a week or 2 or 3. Sometimes it takes 6. Sometimes they say they're not back until their second full season to recover from the injury. Nick just didn't tear an ACL. He tore everything. Everything in his knee. His knee was shredded. It is a medical marvel and a testament to his hard work that he is back after having done that to his knee multiple times now. So he's back. I would also love to see, Khalil Mack not able to chase him down in backside pursuit multiple times where he, might have yardage running left and Khalil Mack slips under a tight end and chases him down. Right now, Khalil Mack's going to be in Canton likely one day. He's a good player who made good plays, but sometimes that backside pursuit gets you where you'd love to see Nick be able to hit that hole.
You're right. As I look at it, Nick Chubb for the season averaging 2.62 yards after contact, which places him 47th in the league this year. He's averaging only 2.7 yards per carry, so he's not even getting any opportunity to get down the field before he is taking that contact. The league leaders, Tank Bigsby, 4.4 yards after contact per carry. Guys like Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Derrick Henry, they're all 3.6, so a full yard after contact or more above where Nick Chubb is right now. So, yes, you've got to get that going. All right, let's talk about a couple of the bright spots, and certainly probably on offense, the biggest bright spot right now is Cedric Tillman, who over the last 3 weeks, is top 5 in every single receiver category there is. Targets, catches, yards, touchdowns, all of it. He's been really, really good.
Yeah, and, he's embracing the opportunity. I enjoyed my conversation with him last week. We talked a lot about just getting the opportunity, embracing it, not looking back, not looking to say what if he had more chances earlier, but now he's getting them. I know I didn't talk to him in the locker room afterwards, but I know that he let one slip away, and he knows that as well in the red zone. He got blasted. Troy Dye was sitting there and blasted him. Didn't hold on to the football. That was a game-changing play. But I think the Browns have found something. He was a third-round pick for a reason. He is a part of the future here, and I'm encouraged, and I can't wait to see what he can do the second half of the year.
All right, big picture, trade deadline looming, obviously, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Where does this team go? You're at 2-7. You are currently tied, unfortunately, for the worst record in the NFL with a great number of teams. In fact, the most teams since 1970 to have just 2 wins through 9 weeks of an NFL season. So where do you go? And, part of it, I think everybody's like, trade everything. You really don't have a lot of leverage. You have the clock ticking against you and teams knowing that you want to trade. So it's not, I think it's maybe a little easier said than done, but you think about where you are in the AFC coming into the game. You were 11th in the conference and only 7 get in. You lost to the team that was 7th. They're now 6th, and you sit at 13th in the conference right now. What do you do here? What do you do at this trade deadline? What's your plan?
I think the Browns are going to get the most calls about their defensive line depth. I know we've thrown Zadarius' name around plenty, but Shelby Harris is playing well. Dalvin is rounding into the Dalvin that we saw last year. He is playing well. Even a guy like Obo. Obo played a heck of a game yesterday as well. Teams need pass rushers. I think Andrew Berry's phone will ring about pass rushers. If I were another team, I would call about Jed. He's in his 5th year, and Kevin made it clear today that DeJuan Jones is the starter moving forward here at left tackle.
Yep.
I don't know what you're going to get. I mean, he is a first-round pick. He has shown the ability to play at a first-round pretty darn good level. Haven't seen it recently, obviously, and he came back from the knee injury and hasn't been himself this year. But I think teams would call about Jed as well. I don't buy the Njoku talk that was out there yesterday that Mike Florio
Me
from Pro
neither.
Football Talk wrote. I don't buy that one. But yeah, look, you also have to understand, like you said, the leverage thing here is what are you going to get in return? You and I were texting last night. People go, "Oh, Z is going to the Lions for a 3." A, they don't own a 3, and B, their 4 would be like pick 145 or something if they make it to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. So you're not going to get an amazing return if you go to Detroit. I thought maybe, hey, what about the Cowboys? Well, now Dak Prescott's going to be out multiple weeks, and they're 3-5, and are they going to be buyers or sellers? If I'm the Cowboys, I'm a seller tomorrow.
Right.
But that's not in Jerry Jones' DNA, so it'll be interesting, man.
It will be. And, I was talking before we brought you on. I was going through the offensive side of it, and I'll do the defense later in the show. But to me, this is about, looking at, young guys on both sides of the ball and off who's going to be your core in 2025 and beyond. Because, yes, you have a chance, obviously, to do something rather historic. Still, it's on the table. You can't say that it isn't until you're eliminated, but it feels unlikely at this point. So to me, a quarterback, that's DTR. Running back, it's about getting Nick Chubb back into form. At receiver, Judy's under contract. Tillman's under contract. Elijah Moore's still a young player on his rookie deal. And then Jamari Thrash is somebody I wouldn't mind seeing. Chief is the only tight end there. And then on the line, it's really DeJuan Jones is the one guy that kind of fits that bill unless you were to maybe make a move. Maybe somebody does call about a Joel Bitonio, the way that Denver called about Joe Thomas all those many years ago. And then maybe you see if can Jed play guard. I don't know. But that's really kind of what you're looking at on offense, I think. Do you agree with that?
No, I do agree. And Zach Zinner got thrown into the fire earlier in the season. You might see him later in the year as well. It's a shame you can't see more Luke Whippler here. Obviously, he's out for the year.
Yep.
I would love to see a little bit of Pierre Strong. You and I talk about that a lot. I think he's got the speed. He's got the burst. I know maybe ball security was a thing last year. Haven't seen that yet this year. I think he has a little juice to the offense. And I too, would like to see DTR. I know people push back and say, "Oh, we haven't seen it from him. We've only seen it in the preseason." Well, the circumstances surrounding his regular season play have not always been ideal.
Yes.
Would love to see him get a shot. Listen, a week ago this conversation was a heck of a lot different. You're riding the wave of optimism and say, what if? Look, if the Browns had played better and they were 3-6, they now have a bye and they're heading to New Orleans to take on a team that just fired its head coach in total disarray right now. Absolute disarray. That didn't happen. So you got to deal with the consequences of that. And the consequences are a total reevaluation. The roster isn't any different today than it was a week ago. It isn't. The difference is you went out there and you played a bad game all around yesterday, save for the defense standing on its head for the majority of the afternoon. Yet they had a couple of breakdowns, and those breakdowns put you in a hole. Those breakdowns actually happened. So you're not 3-6, you're 2-7, which doesn't sound that much different, but in reality, it is considering the NFL landscape.
And it is because one of the teams that I think you knew you were going to have to catch was your opponent on Sunday, was the Chargers. And so that is...
But you have the Broncos coming up too, and they lost. Like, that's what... Just when you sit back and you look, Nathan, sorry to cut you off, at the rest of everything, you're like, man, if you only had that one, right? Then you could beat New Orleans. Who knows what happens with the Steelers? But you get them on a short week in your own building. That's best case scenario. Certainly beating the Steelers on a TNF at home in years past, and then you get Denver. The what ifs are the most frustrating, bleeping part of this whole thing this morning.
Yeah, and you're right. We saw some quotes in various articles of veterans coming out being like, I don't even know what to do. I've never been in this situation where at the bye week it felt like, things were out of reach. And so That's the other part of it. Defensively, you've seen some young guys step up. I think Isaiah McGuire has looked good. I think Mike Hall has certainly flashed at times. You mentioned the veterans on that defensive line. They've been great. Mahmoud Diabate at the second level certainly has shown some promise. MJ Emerson's looking a lot more like MJ Emerson had in previous seasons. There's still a lot to like. Obviously, Grant Delpit, I think, is having a great year. But
yes,
the whole just has not been what the sum of the parts should indicate that it has been. And so I think there's got to be a little bit of an evaluation, right? A little bit of trying to figure out over this bye week how we can get – last year we were a much more depleted team that played a heck of a lot better. And it's easy to say it's quarterback play, and I think that that's a big part of it. But
it is.
There's more to it than that.
Sure. And look, if you get a 98% on your report card defensively, but the 2% were explosive touchdowns. I mean, those explosive touchdowns still count, and the offense just never got it going yesterday. I'm not blaming the defense at all. The offense never got it going. I mean, the 8-minute drive to open up the third quarter, you're like, all right, you're marching down the field, you're getting the breaks, you're completing passes, you go for it on fourth down. By the way, the 4th and 1 was not there. Give Jerome Ford credit.
Oh, man, pushed him right through.
Push, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, pushed him right through. That wasn't there. That was dead. You keep the drive alive, and then give the other guys make plays too. I mean, Tarheep's still. I don't know how many times I've looked at that pick in the corner, a little more air underneath it. I don't know. The kid made a good play. And then, the back shoulder. I mean, some of the throws, the busts are one thing, but the back shoulder that Herbert threw to Emerson, incredible. Now that drive didn't go anywhere. Yeah, like that's he's better than you play. Not better than MJ. It's just like that guy is good. That guy's a top 5 guy for a reason. That's a heck of a throw. You don't stop that. It was a great play. So the Chargers made plays as well. And the Browns simply offensively did not make enough of them. They're taking away the in cuts. I mean, even the ball where one of the picks, the pick to Elijah Moore, the guy undercut it. The guy made a good play.
Yeah, ball hung in the air just enough, was a little bit on the back shoulder, just enough that it turned obviously into another interception. And part of it was, and we had told people coming in, Baltimore went into that game last week as the worst pass defense in the league prior to losing their top 2 corners. And so you had basically a perfect storm.
Marcus Williams.
Right. So you had kind of a perfect storm of this was going to be a success. And if it weren't for a few drops by their secondary, that game looks different. This was going to be a much tougher task. This was the number 1 scoring defense, obviously, in the National Football League. They'd been a good pass defense, despite the fact that you'd say these guys are starting 2 fifth-round rookies at corner. And teams have not been able to take advantage because they've been very sound in their scheme. And, speaking of busts, I was talking with Gibbe earlier, and this as a Browns fan. I was thinking back over the last 4 years, because 2021, when we played the Chargers, there was one of those where they had a bust. We opened that season with a bust against Carolina. It feels like there have been about, 10, I may be exaggerating, of these types of plays where there's certainly one against the Jets. At least 5 I know of for sure, and there's probably a few others I'm forgetting. Over the last 4 years where we just have these busts in zone that lead to the easiest touchdowns ever, and it never happens for us. It doesn't feel like it ever happens for us.
Yeah, Adam Archuleta drew up one on that 4th down in the second half where Jameis threw it to Chubb in space out to the right, and then he got tripped up. I think Troy Dye again made a play. You see Tillman running free, and they're like, oh, he missed that one. I don't know. By the time he turned his shoulders, that's when the DB fell off Tillman and started driving to the backfield there. I don't know that he missed one, but that could have been one of those busts if you, look to the flat and then look back.
Oh, no, you're right about that.
I'm not the quarterback. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
That was there, too. Yeah.
No doubt. All right, if you could see one thing coming out of the bye week for this Browns team, what do you want it to be?
Can we talk again after 4 p.m.
Yes,
tomorrow?
Fair.
I'm sorry.
I believe we will.
Laughter wasn't fair.
I pretty much guarantee it. We'll probably talk many times before that.
I would love to see DTR. I don't necessarily mean this week, but you have to find out what you got.
Right.
You just got. You have to. Organizationally, you have to find out what you have, and that doesn't mean you're going to try to lose a game. Quite the contrary. The guy won a game last year at Pittsburgh. I know it wasn't. I'm sorry, against Pittsburgh. Put together the drive at the end and they won the game. Obviously, defense factored in that as well. But I would love to see him. I am a fan, and maybe you find out that he is going to be a legit number 2 moving forward. That's a good answer. He's still on a rookie contract. That's a good thing to know. So go find that out, and whether that's in New Orleans. Whether that's at Denver on a Monday night, giving him a second consecutive start in Denver. I don't know, but you got to find it out eventually.
Yes, you do. The great Andrew Siciliano, thanks so much for the time. Enjoy the sun and the surf, and we will talk with you again soon, my friend.
I'm a friend. See you soon.
All right. There is Andrew Siciliano. Hey, Browns fan, this month's winner of the local business platform presented by Minutemen is Brewed Awakening. Brewed Awakening is the go-to cafe for coffee and food lovers with locations in both Amherst and Vermilion. Visit clevelandbrowns.com/community/local business platform to learn more. That was a mouthful. All right, we'll be back. Hour number 2, the Joe Thomas half hour here. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet. Leaf Filter is the official gutter guard of the Cleveland Browns. Go to leaffilter.com/GoBrowns to schedule your free gutter inspection and to receive your exclusive promo offer. That's leaffilter.com/GoBrowns. Visit today. Time now for the Joe Thomas half hour. He's going to join the show for the next 30 minutes on the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. Hoff, I think people needed a few Twisted Teas on Sunday after watching the Browns not have a great performance against the Chargers. Just overall, your takeaways from watching that game, and it was one that, you had to win, and it was one that if you did, kind of gave you a little life here in this season.
Well, I think Jameis needed to play better than he did the week before, even though, he had great numbers the week before against the Ravens. Everybody that watched the game realized, we got pretty fortunate on a few of those passes that should have been intercepted and that weren't, and so you're feeling pretty good and hoping, hey, if Jameis doesn't maybe toss those throws that potentially could turn into interceptions, you're going to have an opportunity to move the ball on offense, but you still got to limit mistakes, which they didn't. When you're playing Jim Harbaugh and a team that's old school and kind of relies on those lower scoring games, you got to play good on special teams. They didn't. You missed a field goal. Give up big returns in the return game. You make mistakes there. Those are hidden yards that are really important when you're playing against a tough, hard-nosed, defensive-type team like Jim Harbaugh's teams. And then going back to Jameis Winston, those picks that were interceptions yesterday weren't interceptions against the Ravens. So it was kind of all the things that you needed to have happen didn't happen, and then your defense had breakdowns that led to huge plays in the passing game that you can't have against a talented quarterback like Justin Herbert. So just kind of the polar opposite of what we saw in that stadium the week before against the Ravens.
You mentioned the defensive breakdowns. How does that happen? How does that keep happening? And you and I have talked. We've had this conversation on way too many Mondays where guys just run free for the easiest touchdowns in the world when you're just not all on the same page. How's that happen?
Yeah, it's a communication issue, and without being in those meetings and without being in that room, it's hard to know, was it not communicated clearly during the week? Understanding, hey, what's the check when they get into this formation with the receivers, or maybe it was coming in from the sideline and one of the players got it and didn't give it to the next guy, right? It's like a game of telephone out there in the secondary. You got to give a call and you got to get a call. And that's important to make sure everybody's always on the same page every time they're out there, whether it's a hand signal or whether you're looking at the sideline and looking at the coach. But whenever you have those communication breakdowns, it's because something probably wasn't communicated clearly. There was a little bit of indecision, or just when you're on the field, you're maybe not focused on exactly the task at hand. And so you overlook some of the details because you're totally not locked in on exactly what needs to happen. But either way, as a left tackle, my mistakes led to points, quarterback sack, fumble, hit quarterback as he's throwing, interception. And it's the same idea when you're playing in the secondary. Like, the mistakes are kind of how you're judged, right? You give a big play. It doesn't matter how many great coverage plays you had earlier. It's those one or two mistakes that lead to easy touchdowns that, are the difference in a lot of NFL games, because NFL games are typically going to come down to two or three big plays that one team makes or the other team makes that lead to your victory.
And here's the thing about it. This was the worst part about it. The first touchdown was on a 3rd and 21. The second touchdown was on a 3rd and 6. These are third down plays. 3rd and 21, that should be just about automatic off the, that you're off the field there. And instead, it ends up being a touchdown with those busts. And you mentioned it was just, critical mistakes on both sides of the ball. And I'd say busts that hand out free touchdowns are every bit as painful as an interception, and in fact, probably more so, because it leads directly to 7 points on the scoreboard. Now, we heard today, Hoff, that, Kevin Stefanski said, at least now on this Monday, they haven't gotten to their self-scout or really gotten into things, but that, there would be no major changes coming out of this. I've been on, I want to see DTR get an extended period just to see what you've got. I think at this point we know who Jameis is. Jameis has shown us in 2 games exactly who he is. Can make all the throws, absolutely, but also can throw the ball to the opponent at any time. can lead the league in passing. I mean, he saw it, 5,109 yards back in 2019. But what would you want to see, or what do you hope to hear as this team goes forward, and in light of the fact that the trade deadline's tomorrow?
Yeah, well, obviously the conversation is going to be about, all right, who are the guys that are going to be part of our future next season and then the season after, right? Those are the guys that you're starting to talk about, that if they don't have a long-term future beyond 1 year, beyond next season, potentially they have trade value, and you're thinking, all right, we're not going to make the playoffs this year. So who are the guys we can get value for that aren't going to be part of the plan next year? Or even if they are, maybe you're still going to say, hey, you know what? It makes more sense because we understand we've got a lot of questions that need to be answered before we're going to be able to be a team that competes for the playoffs. And so maybe you're thinking that we need to restock a little bit more through the draft and take a little bit longer term approach. And I'm sure those are the conversations that they're having right now to try to figure out, like how deep do we have to rebuild to be able to get ourselves back to the playoffs? Do we feel like we're close, or do we feel like, we need to maybe get a little bit younger and pick up some more draft capital? Obviously, there's going to be plenty of guys that are still around that are impact players that they want to keep around for a long time. But I think you have to take a big look at your team before the trade deadline and who are the guys that potentially you could move for talent or draft picks that are going to be here potentially longer. And then, like you said, I think DTR, it's reasonable to at least want to get a look from him, because I think after 2 games, we've seen the same version of Javis that we've seen throughout his career. And I think that's going to be kind of who he is. He's going to throw a lot of passes down the field. He's going to throw for a lot of yards, but he's going to put the ball in the air a lot, and potentially they're going to be turnovers. So I think you know what you have with Jameis, and DTR would be that guy that would be good to get some looks. I think Nick Chubb, continuing to work him back into form and trying to figure out, how healthy is that knee? Is he going to be able to get back to 100% by the end of the season? He only had 39 yards. Now the blocking wasn't there for his 15 carries, but I think continuing to kind of ramp him up to a full load is a good thing the rest of the season, to try to figure out kind of where he is and that progression. Yeah. And then just trying to figure out some of those young receivers, right? Keep getting Cedric Tillman involved. I think he's been maybe a bright spot for us. 6 catches in the game, 75 yards after playing great against the Ravens. So as he gets more opportunity, he's blossoming more. So give him some more opportunities on offense. Maybe try to get Elijah Moore, figure out, if he's a guy that can be part of the long-term plan. So I think there's a lot of things that you can still learn on this offense the rest of the season that can help you make those decisions you have to make in the offseason.
Yeah, this is not where we thought we were going to be, right? After 9 games. This is just not what you thought this Browns team would be. Unfortunately, you have had some seasons where you were with the Cleveland Browns that after 9 weeks, it was looking pretty bleak. This team is probably the big difference, though, is this team was not supposed to be in that boat at all. So how do you in the locker room, how do you get guys to stay focused and to not be thinking about vacation? They get paid the same. They all know that. But how do you get them to stay focused and try to do something historic, try to shock the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can talk about we need to take care of us. Like in each individual position group, like on the offensive line, I'm talking to them like, hey, guys, now we got to play better than we've ever played, right? Because the spotlight is on us more than ever, right? Because the evaluations right now are being made and the critical decisions, and the tie goes to the guy that's not in the room. Let's be honest right now, when you're on a losing team, if there's any hesitation or you're wondering, in the off season, is it the guy that we've got or the guy that, is the green grass on the other side of the hill? Like, who should we go for? I think a lot of times when you're on a losing team, unfortunately, the tie goes to the guy that you don't have. And so I think it's more important for those guys now than ever to play their best football, because that everybody's being critically evaluated and trying to figure out, hey, are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution?
Right.
And so I think that's kind of the big message within those rooms, making sure those leaders are selling, hey, this is as important of time as any for us to make sure that we can be part of the solution going down the rest of the season and then next year. And then, if you are able to string a couple wins together, then maybe you can start trying to sell the belief in the playoffs. But I think if you're a captain, if you're one of the leaders in the group and you're still pushing the playoffs as like the motivation, I think you're going to get some deaf ears because I think people realize, that's a stretch at this point. But, you're always playing for, your team and then the team that's watching that film. So just trying to find little ways to continue to keep guys motivated and focused on their job. Do your job now more than ever, because it's when people are really putting you under the microscope.
Obviously, we're talking with the Hoff, and it's, tough conversations about a Browns team that has not been what we expected to be. However, there were some bright spots in this game. We talked about Cedric Tillman already, but defensively, 6 sacks in the first half, Hoff, 3 of them by Myles Garrett, 2 of which came on the same drive. I think it was 3 sacks and 4 pass plays for him against a pretty darn good offensive line with first-round left tackles, a Pro Bowler at left tackle, a first-round right tackle, top 5 pick in Joe Alt, and Myles just was dominant. And the pass rush really was good. Now, no sacks in the second half, but the Chargers really weren't on offense a ton. But 6 sacks in the first half, 3 by Myles Garrett. What'd you see there?
Yeah, pass rush was really good. Obviously, getting to Justin Herbert, you were able to do a lot of good things, and that's the shame, I think, for the defense overall. You look at the numbers. I mean, Justin Herbert had a perfect passer rating.
Yeah.
158. He was 14 of 16, 250, 2 touchdowns just in the first half.
Yep.
And so, like, you look at those numbers, you go, man, they must have really stunk, but it was really just shooting themselves in the foot. Like we talked about earlier, it was those self-inflicted wounds because you make communication errors in the secondary, somebody's running wide open. Justin Herbert's going to hit them, and those big plays just hurt you so much because obviously they're 7, but then when you think about it, it's like, you can play a great game on defense and give up 3 big plays, 21 points, and then obviously it's not good enough. So I think you want to make sure you don't overlook some of the great bright spots, and I think pass rush certainly was one of them. But getting that back end secured, settled, figured out what the communication issues is huge because there are a bunch of great veterans back there. I mean, we got multiple Pro Bowlers in the secondary. We should have one of the best secondaries in the league, and their experience, so they shouldn't be making these communication mistakes that are leading to these big plays. Just not acceptable.
No, it really is not acceptable, and it is obviously very, very unfortunate that this is where this football team is. Do you expect, I think one of the things that is, now the Browns are part of the reason that this trade deadline got moved back a week. They'd like to even see it move back further, and I think it makes sense, right? Teams need to know, are they in or are they out before the trade deadline in the NFL. What's realistic? It feels like the NFL trade deadline, people talk about a lot of stuff and then very little actually happens. Now, we've had some big wide receiver trades earlier in the season than this week here, but what do you kind of make of the trade deadline, and what do you expect to have happen?
Well, I think the big conversation for the Browns has been around Zadarius Smith, especially going potentially to the Lions because they're a team that obviously is going to be potentially competing for a championship. They just lost their pass rusher, Nathan Hutchinson, a couple weeks ago, and they're looking to replace him. And Zadarius Smith is still getting after the quarterback. So I think he'll be the guy that probably gets the most attention. But, I mean, everybody potentially could be available if the price is right. And I think it's good to have that trade deadline move back. I know you don't want the trade deadline to be like right towards the end of the season because obviously you don't want teams just stocking up like crazy to make a run and then also just ripping the cupboards bare of some other team that now has some bunch of bums that can't even be competitive down the stretch. So it's important to have a trade deadline kind of towards the end of the season, but not all the way to the end of the season. But I think having it a little bit later where like a team like the Browns potentially could feel like, we're not making the playoffs. We need to start thinking about next season. And I think those trades in those situations, they're win-wins on both sides. So I think it was good to move that trade deadline back a little bit.
It most certainly was. Hoff, when you have a team where, the whole is not equal to the sum of the parts. It is, in fact, it is less than. And that, I think, is what happened here. And we've heard it, the story of the offense all season was self-inflicted wounds. Now we're hearing the defense use self-inflicted wounds. You're a coach now. You've been a player and a coach. You've been on both sides of it. As a player, you're the one who's playing, right? You're responsible for that. As coach, you're responsible for preparing the player for every possible scenario so they can act right. I'm sure you had times with the Munich Ravens that the player knew what they were supposed to do and they did something differently, and that probably brought a level of frustration to Coach Hoff. What do you make of this? What do you make of self-inflicted wounds continuing to happen? I'm sure everybody knows the rules. They know what coverage they're supposed to be playing, and yet it's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, those are the frustrating ones for coaches, especially if it's something you've gone over a bunch. Like, I remember as a coach, trying to get my guys ready, right? It was very stressful. Like my time as a coach, I really enjoyed it, but I had a lot of stress because when I'm getting myself ready, I control that, right? So I know exactly what I need to do. I know the study I need to do, and then I can go into the game feeling confident and comfortable that the hay's in the barn. I did my study. I'm going to ace the test. But there's always that question mark, right, when you're going into a game as a coach, because you don't control it anymore, right? You've done your best to try to get 5 guys ready now instead of just 1. So obviously the amount of work that I was doing getting 5 dudes ready was a lot different. But I would try to give them flashcards just like I did, where they could go over like the most important points, maybe the changes that we made, the adjustments, the different things the defense was going to give us. I would actually go through and take screenshots of the defensive look, and then I would write the play underneath, and then they could go through like a PowerPoint and press the button so they could kind of quiz themselves on, what the defense is going to give them. And then the second slide was, all right, this is the blitz that you got, right? So you could give them a way to study so that they could kind of learn that way, and then you'd always have a test I'd give them the day before the game where you just have all the different looks on a sheet with all the plays, and then they'd have to draw up the blocking schemes and stuff like that. So you kind of hit it in a couple different ways. So depending on how somebody learns or if something falls through the cracks, you're at least hitting it right before the game, and then you're going over it one more time in the locker room just talking about it before they go on the field, so it's the last thing, the freshest thing in their minds. And so I'm sure the coaches are doing something similar to that, and it's frustrating when you're not getting those results, especially over something that you've gone over as many times as you do in the NFL, because that's all you do is football during the season. You're there basically the entire day. So it's frustrating, and then it becomes tough decision-making time. It's like, all right, are we making this mistake on the field because it wasn't coached properly, it wasn't communicated properly from us, or does the player just not have the ability to focus through a full game for whatever reason to be able to clear up the details and get everything right consistently? And then if you can't do that, you got to find somebody else.
They do say sometimes coaching is hard for the greatest of greats, because I know your preparation and you talked about what you thought about on every play, and not everybody is even capable of that, even if they wanted to be. What was that part of it like for you?
That was tough. I told those guys a bunch. I said, hey guys, I'm sorry. I know the stuff, and sometimes it's hard because for me, I was really good at just seeing something and then doing it. Like I had a high level of like motor skills to be able to just watch something one time and then make my body do it. And not everybody's like that. So it actually was great for my brain to kind of learn how to describe like what I was doing, because a lot of times I didn't even have to think about it, right? I just did it. And I think that's why you see probably not as many guys that were at that Pro Bowl Hall of Fame level go into coaching. I think because a lot of times they were just so good that they could just do it, and they never had to learn like the detailed method of like describing it or going through different little drills. And so I learned a lot just as a coach about how to describe and teach and communicate things to be able to get it done when it was something that was just second nature for me. Or even, coaching, we had a guy named Simone Huger. He was 20 years old. He'd never played. I mean, they don't have high school football. They don't have college football. They just have clubs. So he just played like small-time clubs. So this was his first time playing adult football. He was playing like youth football the year before. And he actually turned out to be one of our better players. And like we had some defensive line injuries. So he was a big dude, good athlete. We put him over there in D-line for a little bit, and he was a quick learner. But I mean, I remember like trying to describe the stance to him. And I was like, well, just do this. And I would get in a stance, and he couldn't do it. And I was trying to think of a way to like describe it, but it's almost like you would be better sometimes as a coach when you've had high school experience, coaching a guy who's walked in and doesn't know how to put his thigh pads in his pants, because then you've learned like the fundamentals that way of, all right, put this hand down, move this foot back just this much. Because after you do it for so long, you don't even remember what it was like being in high school and being in those rooms and getting coached up on some of like the most tiny details. So I think that was almost the hardest challenge. Like once we got the guys to the middle of the season and all their stances were good, they understood the basics, like the little basic footwork and stuff, then it was a lot more fun and easy for me because I could kind of use the coaching that I was using as a player once you get to that higher level. But I think that's, one of the challenges for all coaches, right, is how do I connect with my player? How do I get across to him? How does he learn so that he doesn't forget it, right? I think that's one of those famous sayings, you practice not till you get it right, but till you can't get it wrong. And I think that's a great saying in coaching. It's like, all right, how do I teach this guy so he can't get it wrong? Not so he can just get it right in practice a few times, but under duress. How does he understand it so that he can't possibly screw it up?
I love it. I would have being in your meetings must have been hilarious because things to you probably were so not even second nature. Were just you didn't even whatever it would be if there was third nature for it, would just automatic. And they were probably like, "What are you even talking about right now, Hoff? Like, what is it?"
Oh man, it was great. It was fun, yeah, because I could tell like they had a separate chat group with those guys, and I was like, "You guys realize if you just chat in German on our chat group, I'm not going to know what you're talking about. So you don't have to like chat on the side, and I'm not going to get my feelings hurt." But I could tell sometimes like I would start a film review, and I would spend like 20 minutes on the first play because I would just get into such granular detail because I was having fun, really. That's what it was.
Of course.
I was just excited, talking shop to some guys, and I could tell like some of it's going over their head. And then I realized like, oh, I only got 40 minutes left. I got another 40 plays to get through. We're going to have to speed this up a little bit. Sorry, I can't spend 20 minutes on each play.
Was that one of the big learnings of being a coach was like how to get 80% of the message across in 20% of the time so that you could at least help them get there in an effective way? Because you probably could have done your whole meeting on 2 plays every meeting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the hardest thing. It was like once I get going, I was really excited to talk about some of this stuff. But then I realized I was just spending way too much time. And as a coach, you never have enough time to do everything, especially on the offensive line. So it's always prioritizing in your mind. What's the most important thing to tell them right now so that we can get the most important stuff covered? And that's the same problem in practice, especially in the ELF when we're only really practicing like 2 days a week. It's like, okay, in 2 days, I got to cover the whole game plan. So how do I give them the stuff that's the most important right now? And unfortunately, I felt bad because like some of our more development guys, like the second and third string guys, they just didn't get as much quality coaching because you just don't have time once the season starts to be able to distribute, one coach's brain to 11 guys.
It is really, I remember Larry Bird talked about that when he was coaching, I want to say the Pacers, and he had to get a very veteran team because he just couldn't handle that. A lot of the guys just couldn't process what he was telling them. So he's like, I need guys that absolutely understand the game like I do, which I think is, it makes a lot of sense there. All right, Hoff, what was your bye week routine? I would imagine, and let's give me early career Hoff, and then late career Hoff, I know it was just healing your body. What was it early career?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was more healing your mind. I mean, I was always trying to go back to Wisconsin, see some friends and family, but just get off my feet. I'd usually go do some deer hunting and try to get in a tree, get away from football, turn my phone off for a little while. Because I think it's, especially early in your career, it's really important to get that mental refresh so your brain just doesn't get turned into scrambled eggs by the end of the season. Because you're just learning so much information every day that, it's pretty easy to just get overwhelmed. And kind of burned out by the end of the season. Coming from college, you only play 12, maybe 13 games. It's just so much of a shorter season. So I think just getting away from the game is the most important thing to recharge those batteries and get yourself ready to go for a stretch run, really second half of the season. It's like 2 different seasons going training camp, the hot part of the season, September, October, and then all of a sudden you kind of find yourself middle of the season, figure out, all right, we can make a playoff run or maybe not. Maybe we've got the goals have changed a little bit. And you want to be fresh and you want to have your mind ready so that you can be at your best every single day. So I think just that mental refresh is huge. And then as you get older, obviously trying to get that active rest is huge. Because if you just lay around for the whole week, like you're going to feel worse than you did before the bye week. So it's important to do stuff. Like I would always tell guys like, hey, go take a yoga class, go swim, do something active, go for hikes, do whatever you got to do, but make sure you're moving your legs every day, you're stretching, because otherwise you're going to come back stiff and rusty, and there's nothing worse than trying to get back into it after a bye week when you feel worse than before this week started.
Did you always try to take like also one thing, obviously you wanted to rest your body, but maybe one thing or one concept that you wanted to mentally work on, and so that when you came back, this was something that had given you problems, or maybe, and for you, maybe that was, you're probably obsessed with the one play out of the 570 by the bye week that you had failed. Was there anything like that you would recommend if any players happen to be listening to Browns Daily right now that you'd say focus on two things, one thing, just anything like that?
Yeah. So it was interesting. Like by my last year, I had a really good process, which I think was really important, right? Because it gives you confidence if you have a process, because you go through your process, you check off your boxes, and you feel good going into the game. But then there's also like the week-to-week process. And back when I was playing, there was no mandatory days off during the bye week. So we would usually come in, practice like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we get like Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, come back, practice Monday, Tuesday off. So we didn't have quite as much time off. So we did more review as a group, as a unit together. But like by the end of my career, we did have that, I think it's like a 5-day mandatory off now. So you'd still get a couple practices in before you leave town. But for me, like the way my process went each week, you know, I had my things I wanted to work on, so I was taking notes on everything I did. Every play got basically reviewed in my notebook, and then if I made a mistake, I'd highlight it, and then that was the stuff I would review before game day, right? But then when you'd review the game film, you'd have all your mistakes that you made, and then you'd just compile a list, right? And then you'd put it on one page, so that when the bye week came, you could go back through all the games that you're reviewing, and then you could see like, okay, maybe there's 3 or 4 things from each game that I made a mistake, so now make a list. And then every time you made the same similar mistake, you make a checklist, and then you pretty soon have a pretty good idea, okay, you've played 9 games. All right, I've made this type of mistake 7 times, whatever it is. It might be just a little technique thing. But then now you're like, okay, this is clearly my biggest issue right now. Now this is what I want to work on during the bye week, but how do I get it done, right? It's not just about going out and practicing. It's like, all right, what have I been doing to try to fix this? If that's not working because I keep making a mistake, now I got to try a different drill, different technique, do something a little bit differently to try to hammer it home. And the bye week's a great chance to do that because, well, you don't have a game, right? You don't have to worry about if I switch something up, is it going to make everything worse? No, hey, I can try some new stuff. I can try some new drills, go out there, practice it a few times against my team, my defense potentially, and then I don't have to worry about, you know, my quarterback getting killed if I screw it up. And maybe I find something that does work for me, and then now I can kind of incorporate that as part of my technique, as part of kind of who I am. And so I think that's just like the little process that every player has to build and figure out for themselves, because getting better is not just a random occurrence. It's not like, oh, hey, you know, like in high school, oh, I practiced a bunch and now I'm a better player. Like at this level, everybody's pretty good. They've been coached for a long time. So it's about, all right, what's my process that I'm going to figure out how to get better at all these little things. Because if I just get better at one thing by the end of the season, like I'm going to be a much better player every single season. And so you just kind of stack those things, and it's kind of like, you know, working on a car or something, just a little bit over time.
A little bit here, a little bit there, a little tinkering to get it to perfect. Hoff, you are the greatest. Duh, you're the Hoff. Always a joy talking with you, even under not so glorious times for our Cleveland Browns.
No doubt. Z, I appreciate you having me on. It's always good to chat, and look forward to getting back up to Cleveland there in a couple
Oh,
of weeks.
baby. It's going to be it's going to be a feast. Oh, baby. Yes, indeed. Yeah, start your planning now. I know how you like to know when you're going to have a crazy meal. You like to plan for it. So begin the planning.
All right. Perfect.
All right.
I'm in.
All right, Hoff. All right, when we come back, we're going to get our great clips, great clip of the game. It's called Coming Your Way here, Cleveland Browns Daily, as we wrap it up on this Monday after the Browns drop 27-10 to the Chargers. And Cleveland Browns Daily is brought to you by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. Want to get your kid involved with the Dog Pound? Join the Junior Browns Backers, presented by University Hospitals Rainbow Babies and Children's, and in association with Cardinal Credit Union, the Cleveland Browns official kids club. For kids aged 4 to 12, enjoy events, activities, and more. Visit juniorbrownsbackers.com to join now. All right, time now for our great clips. Great clip of the game. Great clips. It's going to be great.
And the Chargers now start on their own 21-yard line, up 7-0 on the Browns. Fake pitch to Dobbins. Herbert to throw. Herbert gets sacked. Brought down at the 14-yard line. Welcome back, Myles Garrett. Take a bow. His first sack since Vegas in September. 3rd and 18 for the 13. Shotgun. Crowd gets loud. Herbert has the snap. Herbert to throw. Here comes Garrett. Myles takes him down again. Dobbins, the back, with McCaffrey in motion left to right. Herbert play fake. Herbert steps up. Herbert is sacked again. Myles Garrett's got 3.
Yesterday, I was getting grief not only from you, but from her about my gloves. The gloves yesterday. Phooey. Hey.
I made fun of him.
Come on.
I made fun of him all day. Isotoners. Isotoner. I'm like, are you the new spokesperson for isotoners?
It's 40 degrees in the shade, and you're just sitting there.
You're doing your job.
Right.
You did it well.
So just so you know, there were other people that had hand warmers. Other people had hand warmers and gloves. I was just out there with just gloves. That's called.
You're the Browns media.
You know
person.
what? There's an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David goes to a beach party at night, and he brings with him a jacket in the car. And when he goes down to the beach, all of a sudden it's nighttime. It starts to get cold, so he wants to go get his jacket. He goes up to the car where his jacket's gone. Comes back to the party, and he sees his buddy's wife wearing his jacket. And so he walks up to her, and the first thing he does, he goes, "Brrr, it's cold out here, isn't it?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Fortunately, I found this jacket." He's like, "You found it? Where'd you find it?" "Oh, it was in a car." He said, "You just went to a car and took a jacket?" "Yeah." He said, "Well, that's my jacket." And she's like, "Do you want it back?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do, actually." And they go back and forth. She ends up not getting him the jacket, obviously. And the point is, Larry was saying, I anticipated being cold. I brought the jacket. Therefore, I should be rewarded for having the foresight to bring a jacket. A person who did not have that foresight should not be rewarded. In this case, I had the foresight to know that my hands are going to be cold. I brought the gloves. I shouldn't be getting any grief for it.
I just wanted to know if you were replacing Dan Marino as a spokesperson for isotoners.
Call me. I'm available. And my hands were great. Best my hands have felt. They were it was tremendous. It was a delight. The week before, because see, where our desk is set up, if our desk was on the Brown sideline, no problem.
You had a little sound check yesterday in the background?
Nope.
We enjoyed watching that from up above.
Oh, my goodness. I was like, what?
I'm like, where's that coming from?
Is this karaoke? Great performance, by the way, and the guy on the and it was the Army's music band, basically, and they did a great job.
They were awesome, but we didn't know where it was coming from at first.
There was a guy
in the stands.
Yeah, there was a guy on the scoreboard though who was the star of that performance. Whoever you are, thank you. You were tremendous. Probably the most entertaining thing that happened at the stadium, unfortunately, unless you were a Chargers fan.
Yes.
Although Myles Garrett getting 3 sacks was there. By the way, it's a great clip of the week. I feel like we should give the listener the full context there. We should give how did Myles get the sacks? Not just that he got them. They know he got them.
Gabe, in other words, Nathan's upset you didn't include him in the great clips montage.
Oh, G-Man did it?
Yeah.
Oh, then it's fine. I thought you did it. No. I thought you did it just on purpose.
No.
And
I asked the G-Man to do it, and he knocked it out.
This gives us a bit. This gives us a thing to talk about.
Yeah.
All right, good. G-Man, no worries.
No, now it's okay.
I think G-Man did it, though, because he's not at 100% because you got him sick.
I didn't get him sick. I had a sinus infection.
And
I can't give that to other people.
Well, it's weird because you mentioned that, and then guess who came down with a sinus infection a couple days later?
You cannot pass that along.
All of us.
So you're saying it's just coincidence that the people who share an office with you got sick about 72 hours after you were sick. That's what you're saying.
No point. At no point was I even on my deathbed. There was nothing. I had nothing going on.
I went out yesterday while taking a Z-Pack and played like a champion.
Z-Packs. I think they're overrated.
I think
you need I need something more. When I get a Z-Pack, I'm like, I'll see you in 5 days because this isn't going to do anything for me.
That's because you have created super bacteria in your body because you don't finish your antibiotics. And sometimes you just have the leftovers around, you just pick them up and do it not in a full regimen. You're creating that's why innocent people like me and G-Man, Jordan, look at him. He's on his way to a sinus infection. You can tell. That's why we're affected.
You can tell, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's just we're doing the math. It feels like that's where we're headed.
No, we're not headed that way. Everybody this week, we need to be. Everybody needs to take care of themselves.
Well, there's no game. I mean, if there was a week to actually
No.
week.
This is not the week.
No, be healthy so you can enjoy and live.
You
gotta live.
We need to live.
We need to live. All right.
We need a couple days.
When we come back, final score of the week to go over. Scores have been good. Scores have been very
I did
good.
get Mr. Bishop's score.
As did I. I texted him as well. Okay, good. See, we're on it. Look at that. A couple of professionals, big B's. All right, we'll be back. Final thoughts, wrapping up. So much more to come. Cleveland Browns Daily brought to you by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. Rumpke Waste and Recycling, the recycling leaders, invested over $100 million to build North America's largest, most technologically advanced recycling center right here in Ohio. Visit rumpke.com to learn more about tours and how this facility helps grow our circular economy. Wow. You should check that out, Gibbe. It could be a nice bi-week activity for you.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Anything's on the schedule.
That's right.
Not traveling anywhere. Well, I shouldn't say that. We're going to get out of town, but no planes.
No planes, just a road trip?
Yeah, within a couple hours. Just get away for the weekend. A little
All right.
Airbnb.
Nice. Where?
Unplug. Finalizing that, but we're going to be on a lake, not Lake Erie, but we're going to be on a lake.
A lake, yeah. And
Yeah,
look at the water.
I think we're going to take the dogs and.
Oh, baby. How about it?
One of those places just has bars around it.
Yeah.
Go live a little bit.
As well you should.
Yes.
All right. You said you had made some notes about around the league stuff.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Saints firing Dennis Allen.
He has been fired now twice midseason with Derek Carr as his quarterback with two different franchises. By the way, Derek Carr I watched that play with Olave. Obviously, it wasn't a great throw, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Michael Thomas, an angry guy. Seems very
Michael
unhappy.
Thomas, you just got to play the game of football. Like you had this monster year, and you were the offensive player of the year, and then you disappeared. You literally fell off the face of the NFL.
Is he in the league
earth.
right now?
I have no idea. I wouldn't even know. He doesn't do anything. I can assure you that.
No, he is not. No, maybe.
The Raiders firing offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, offensive line coach and QB coach. Fourth time in the past 5 years the Raiders have switched coordinators or head coaches in the middle of a season. That is no way to go through life.
No. Michael Thomas, by the way, 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro, all in his first 4 seasons. And then the last good 149 catches, 1725, 9 touchdowns in 2019. 20 plays 7 games. Didn't play with an ankle in 21. 3 games in 22. 10 games in 23. Yeah, he had not gotten back to just over 1,000 yards in those 3 seasons, and then that was it. He's not on a roster right now.
Tells you all you need to know. 49ers have opened the window for Christian McCaffrey.
He practiced today, supposedly looked good, and he is on track to make his return to the field this Sunday. And for people who have been
2 minutes,
very patient, waiting for him in fantasy football, it seems like you're going to get him back.
Well, if you're still in contention, congratulations.
Yeah, I got one. I got one team it is.
Denver making a trade today with Arizona. Arizona acquiring edge rusher Baron Browning from Denver for a 6th rounder.
Yeah, Baron Browning, I'm pretty sure was out of Oklahoma. Oh, I'm sorry, from Ohio State. That's right. That's why I knew that name. 3rd round pick there, 9.5 sacks in his career. He had 5 in 22, 4.5 in 23. Wasn't getting much playing time this year. Only 5 games, 2 starts. So he goes to Arizona. So Arizona obviously looking to kind of buttress the edge right there.
They're looking to be contenders.
Yeah, as well they should be right now. They're first place in that division.
Yeah, indeed. A little Monday Night Football score.
All right, final score of the week. It's the Bucks at the Chiefs.
I think Travis Kelce was at Taylor's final concert
1 minute,
Saturday night
1 minute.
in Indy.
Oh, was he?
I think so.
People were attacking Jason Kelce, and he was not having it.
Boy, I don't think that's the guy I'm going after in the parking lot.
No, I feel bad for him, too, that because he's Jason Kelce, then you wonder if there are going to be any repercussions from this. But that guy was way out of line, and he said, here's what I'm going to do about it.
Kansas City hosting Tampa Bay.
All right,
Segura.
Bo Bishop, he sees this one. Chiefs
30.
100, Bucks 92.
92.
And I see it the same way.
Oh, samesies.
Samesies. So that's where we are with that
15.
one. I don't know. This would be it feels like too many. Who knows? All right, the next level is next. Thanks for listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet on 850 ESPN Cleveland, WKNR.